Welcome to the AFL Run Home for round 24, the last round of the AFL season. I'm Kieran Francis, and joining me is Bryn Wakefield to talk about all the football action before the final. How you going, Bryn?
Good, Kieran. How are you?
Yeah, I'm excellent, mate. We'll get straight into it. The top 8 battle is still alive. There's technically 3 teams that can make it into one spot. We've got GWS, Western Bulldogs, and mathematically Essendon can make it, but I don't think that's much of a chance after what happened last week. There's 3 games that are relevant. Geelong, Western Bulldogs on Saturday night, Carlton, GWS on Sunday night, and Essendon versus Collingwood technically on Friday night. How do you see this panning out?
Yeah, so the Western Bulldogs versus Geelong is a really interesting one. Obviously, the Bulldogs need to make up that game. They lost to West Coast last week, which was surprising. But Geelong, they have no real. They can't make finals. They're sitting out Cameron and Hawkins, I believe. So I think the Dogs can win this one, Kieran. They can't make finals. They're sitting out Cameron and Hawkins, I believe. So I think the Dogs can win this one, Kieran.
It'll be interesting. The Bulldogs have struggled at boutique venues in recent weeks. They lost to GWS at Ballarat and also Hawthorn in Tasmania. So it'll be interesting to see how they're going, because I think if they're losing to West Coast, then they're not going too well. You are right, though. If Geelong do rest players, it does make the equation swing toward the Bulldogs. And with all occasions here, so we've got GWS on 48 points, the Bulldogs on 44, and then Essendon also on 44, but with a low percentage. The Bulldogs' percentage is higher than GWS's, so it's a pretty simple equation. They need to win to get in and then hope GWS lose against Carlton. So I guess as neutrals, we're hoping that the Bulldogs win so that the game on Sunday night has a bit of a bite to it.
Well, it's one we've looked at for a few weeks, Kieran. The 2 teams have been in great form, aside from maybe a blip with GWS against Port Adelaide. Last week, they smashed Essendon by over 100 points. Carlton have been on a 9-game win streak, so it's going to be a massive game. Last game of the home and away season, and could decide the finals fixture.
Fingers crossed it's not a dead rubber. Well, the top 4 race is still open as well. All positions are still open. Top spot can be taken. Teams can fall to 4th on the ladder. We'll just flash up the top 4 now. We've obviously got Collingwood on top at 68 points. And then Brisbane are on the same percentage, 1 win behind. Port Adelaide with a little bit of less percentage on the same amount of wins as Brisbane. And then 4th, Melbourne, with the best percentage of all teams, mind you, with 2 wins off the top. So the permutations are Collingwood play Essendon on Friday night. They win, they finish top. And then Brisbane plays St Kilda at the Gabba on Saturday afternoon. We know how difficult Brisbane are to beat at the Gabba, so that's probably not going to happen. And Port Adelaide play Richmond at Adelaide Oval on Sunday, and then Melbourne have to travel to Sydney. So my question is, do you see the top 4 changing in its makeup at all before the end of the season?
It's a tough one to call. I could almost see Collingwood losing. They've obviously been dropping form, and we'll talk about that a bit more, I think. But they're a possibility to lose even to Essendon, which is something we're probably weren't expecting to say at this point of the season. Brisbane look pretty strong to me. I think they'll beat St Kilda, although the Saints are in some good form. And then Melbourne and Port Adelaide, I see both winning. I'm not sure. Like I said, we'll see much movement, possibly Brisbane going into first, but I guess something to keep an eye out for. I think Melbourne could potentially sneak into that second spot as well. So it's going to be an interesting one.
It'd be a huge game for the Demons at the SCG on Sunday afternoon. Sydney are obviously in form as well. So, Melbourne really do need to get a home final. They will be relying on either Brisbane or Port losing, though, to get into that home final spot. I think the makeup's going to stay the same. I think Essendon are going too poorly to beat Collingwood. Maybe they'll lift because it's the big rivalry. It's on a Friday night, and maybe they'll be stung up to poor performance. But I think the makeup will be the same. And if you had to say which team is going to win the flag right now, just off the cuff, who would you pick?
Maybe a bit of recency bias, but you've probably got to pick Brisbane right now. Just how well they played against Collingwood, and probably 2 home finals is almost a guaranteed grand final berth for them. So most in form, and Collingwood have dropped off. So, yeah.
Same for me, Brisbane as well, I think. Yeah, they're definitely the most informed team. Probably in the top four. Carlton might rival them if we include teams outside the top four, but yeah, home finals of Brisbane. Although they've been in this position before and in previous years and haven't got the chocolates in terms of premiership, so it'll be interesting to see what happens. Moving on to the fiasco in Adelaide, the goal review decision, which completely would have changed the makeup of the ladder of the finals race. First of all, before we look at what could have happened if the decision was right, what did you make of the decision and the process?
Well, obviously, being in South Australia, I've heard a lot about it. The Crows fans are not happy whatsoever, and you really can't blame them. Obviously, watching that game, you could see. Did you think it was a goal when you first saw that, Kieran?
Yes, I did. And it's we like the fact that umpires are kind of like taking it on themselves to make the decision, but you can also make the decision and review it. I think the flaw in the system here is that all scores aren't reviewed. Anyway, like the same as all goals are reviewed when it comes to soccer, football. No matter what happens, it's reviewed. So I think that I don't think you should review behinds. Although maybe you should if the game's close and it's kind of out of bounds. But maybe you should review scores and then you should bring the ball back if a score problem's happened. I mean, I guess that's probably the reason why the AFL hasn't done it, because of the, imagine if like they reviewed a goal and then the ball at the other end and everything and brought it back, it'd be a bit of a disaster. And I don't think AFL fans would be too happy about it. But I think you just have to do it because, it's just too important. We'll flash up what the final 8 would have looked like if Adelaide had have actually won the game. We would have 6 teams in the finals race. Richmond mathematically would be able to make it, but their percentage is probably too low. GWS would be in 7th. The top 6 is the same, mind you. GWS would be in 7th, Sydney 8th, Adelaide 9th, the Dogs 10th, Essendon 11th, Geelong 12th. Geelong could quite foreseeably make it because the percentage is so strong. A loss for Sydney and a win for Geelong against the Bulldogs would have probably got them at least above Sydney, and then they would just need other results to go in their favour. It's pretty crucial. And then if you also kind of cast our eyes back to the Carlton-Melbourne game with the controversial goal review decision where, it was probably inconclusive. Marchbank said he touched it with his hand. Definitely didn't touch his fingertips. So it hit his forearm or nothing. Melbourne would be in 2nd. Home final areas. Carlton would still be fighting for the position in the 8. It's been too many crucial areas are happening. It needs to be sorted out. How would you fix the problem if you were in charge? Tough question, but yeah.
Very tough question. I think Andrew Dillon will have to be covering this in his new role. It's going to be one of the bigger things considering how it's affected the season. I don't know. Can we get better camera angles? Can we get a bit more depth? It just seems like it's, 2 kind of shoddy cameras on either goalposts and we're not really getting a great view. And definitely in that situation, it should always go to a goal review. Maybe in the last 2 minutes, you have to refer to the arc or something like that. You see that in the NBA even. So with out of bounds calls, I think that could potentially work.
Yeah, I think they're going to get better cameras. It looks like the cameras are filmed on a potato half the time. And I think that it's a possibility. Look, obviously they're not going to be able to install amazing cameras in, say, TIO Stadium in Darwin because they play 2 games there a year. It's not feasible. I think everyone would be happy if they installed better quality cameras, possible technology in MCG, Marvel, Adelaide Oval, Optus Stadium, Gabba, the SCG, the stadiums where games are played regularly. And they say, look, it's not financially feasible to install these cameras at Mars Stadium and whatnot. Clearly define what's going on. And I think that might make a difference. Or if they've got the money, just install it everywhere. But I think that they need to get the process right. And I mentioned it before. You need to review every score. Even if the umpire doesn't call for it, the score review should be looking at the decision still. Don't they do that anyway? Like I've seen that happen times during the year anyway.
It does
it's
happen
only for a goal, not a point. Yeah, so I think it's only for goals they review. They don't review points. So anyway, hopefully they'll fix that up. Moving on to another thing that's struggling, that's the Bulldogs. Luke Beveridge is suddenly under huge pressure. Kane Corns is calling for his head. Bulldogs fans are calling for his head. What do you make of the situation?
It's not a good situation, Kieran. Just having a look at some of the last games and their stats, they're losing clearances to Hawthorn and West Coast when they've really their midfield's their biggest strength. You look at their defensive rating, offensive rating, it's both down, particularly their attack. So it's just really come unstuck for them. And I'm not sure, I've been sure about Bevo. Obviously, he's had some really great years, and I think you're a firm supporter of him, Kieran, but yeah, I'm just not sure at the moment.
Yeah, I think he did well to win the flag and make the grand final, but I mean, they haven't made the top four in his 7 years in charge, which is probably it's not a brilliant start. You'd think that with the list they would be making it. Everyone thought they were going to make finals. They had GWS in Ballarat, Hawthorn, Tasmania, West Coast, and Marvel. You've got to be winning two of them, like minimum, probably three. Playing GWS in Ballarat, lost three of them. They did get a win against Richmond in between, but yeah, they find themselves outside the eight. Talking about the games the past 2 weeks, it seems as if Luke Beveridge wants to back in their midfield to get the job done. He doesn't want to use any taggers, and a really good example of that was Tim Kelly on the weekend. 32 disposals, 8 clearances, 5 goal assists. The commentators were talking about Kelly's impact in the first quarter, about how he could be someone that could be shut down, and there was just no one that went to shut him down. And Kelly was, for me, the difference in the game in terms of his impact in the middle of the ground. You go back a week before, Jai Newcomb, who I think is a pretty good player, not elite, but pretty good. I mean, he's borderline elite. 40 disposals, 5 clearances, 2 goal assists. That's just too much impact on a game. And it seems as if Bevo is backing in their system and it is not coming through, and he's not coaching well, reacting well to it. And I mean, to put it plainly, I think they're underachieving. Is that how you see it as well?
Yeah, well, it's a strange thing you're saying, given how many quality midfielders they have on that team. So yeah, you see Tim Kelly, it's not just about the touches he gets, but the way he's running out of the packs, he's getting free, really damaging the game. So it's a concern for them for sure.
I think that their midfielders' defensive quality isn't brilliant. Bontempelli works pretty hard 2 ways. We know that. He's their leader. He's their best player. He's probably the best player in the competition, or close enough to it. But, some of the other midfielders, Bailey Smith, Jack McRae, I don't think they're the best two-way runners. I think Liberatore is decent, but he did obviously didn't play on the weekend, and that could have been a pretty important factor. But yeah, the Bulldogs missed the finals. Do you think it's time for a change coaching-wise, or do you think they'll stick with Bevo? Bevo is contracted till the end of 2025, I think, off the top of my head. But yeah, what do you think?
I see them sticking with Bevo for at least another year. Yeah.
Yeah, Chris Graham was pretty firm during the week, football operations manager, that they would support him. But, I mean, we've seen coaches support it before and then they've been drilled a week later. So interesting to see that it's going to be a big game for the Dogs against down at Geelong, a place they haven't won at since 2003 as well. They've got to win to make finals, and if they don't, then it's definitely a failure of a season. Moving on to Collingwood, probably 2 months ago, we're all saying that Collingwood were flag favourites. Brisbane were going that well. We could have said that, Collingwood were the teams were going to win the flag, and now it's flipped on its head. No team has lost more than twice from round 17 and won the premiership. Collingwood have lost 3 times now. What's going on there? Is it just a case of personnel, or is it another problem?
For me, I think it is the personnel. I mean, they've got some really, really important players out. Darcy Moore, Nick Dacos, and even Jordan Maguire missed. They're probably going to have Nathan Murphy miss part of finals, or even just next week. So, yeah, it seems to be a personnel thing, because I don't know, what else can you put it down to? They've dropped off defensively. Their midfield's not working. They look slow without Dacos in there. So it's a really strange one, Kieran.
Yeah, I think Dacos, I can't believe that a team would miss a second-year player as much as what they do, but we all know Dacos is a freak and how good he is and everything. But his ability to link the midfield together, to use the ball well, I mean, I'm guessing he's averaging around 30 touches a game. He's using the ball so well, getting score involvement, score assists, kicking goals. Darcy Moore, their leader. I've noticed Jeremy Howe's been playing forward as well. It's obviously Craig McRae's been worried about the functionality of the forward line to do that. And as an extension, they've conceded 100 points the last 2 weeks with Howe playing mostly up forward. Billy Frampton hasn't been too brilliant, filling in for Moore. And you're right, Nathan Murphy's a huge out. It means that Howe's going to have to go back to defence. And yeah, it's going to mean that their forward line is going to be less functional. So yeah, do you think they can still win the flag though, or do you think that do you think teams have kind of figured them out? And you know, they had a really good run of injuries until now, but they're starting to sort of get some players off the park now. Do you think that they're cooked?
I think they can still win the flag. They're in a good position. They're probably going to finish first, so they're always a chance. But yeah, I wouldn't have them as flag favourites right now.
Do you think they'll make the grand final?
It's hard to say. I mean, if they come up against someone like Melbourne, you know, it's going to be really difficult to beat them at the MCG. So I'm not sure. It's hard to say.
Yeah, it's a very tough question. Very tough question. Well, it's going to be an exciting last round of games, and hopefully we have a little bit less controversy with the goal review system and the results do the talking in the park. I'm Kieran Francis. This is Bryn Wakefield, and we'll be joining you next week to chat about the AFL finals.